Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. We're back here at RANDAZZO'S, David. And David is sporting his Miguel Cotto MechTech shirt.
I'd like to point out that my good friend Armando over here is the one who got this for me for my birthday last week.
And I see you've already ruined it. Miguel Cotto's...
it came to me like this, actually.
Miguel Cotto's chest is falling off.
You gave it to me half
and
destroyed.
I have a Rocky shirt. I guess MechTech is good at mechanics and cars and all. Not really good at making T-shirts, apparently.
No.
But, dude, I got this at Old Navy. Apparently, Old Navy must really like boxing because I got this shirt, I got a couple of Ali shirts, I got a Joe Frazier shirt.
Sure.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Old Navy's really doing it big for the sport of boxing. At least somebody is.
We need to get them as a sponsor.
We should.
And I'm just looking here to make sure we're recording, but we are. We are recording audio. And David, this past weekend, Edwin Rodriguez. It was kind of a reminiscent of the past Boxing After Dark shows of way back when they throw 3-4 fights and feature prospects. Edwin Rodriguez, one of those prospects, looked great in his bout. What do you think of him, and what kind of noise can he make in the super middleweight division?
I'm a big fan of Edwin Rodriguez. I had a chance to see him fight on the undercard of Sergio Martinez, Matthew Macklin in New York City for St. Patrick's Day, and he took apart Donovan George in that fight very convincingly. And the guy can punch when he wants to. He can box if he needs to. That's usually how he goes about his business. But he's slick. He to me in many ways seems like a complete fighter. Doesn't mean that he's a great fighter yet. But it seems that he's got all the tools in his arsenal to be special.
Including blitzing his opponent, because from the first round, I mean, he just dominated Escalera.
Yeah, not even close. I mean, Escalera's no pushover either.
Right.
And now Edwin Rodriguez is calling for a Kelly Pavlik fight, which I think is a fight that he wins.
I do too. I agree.
But I think this is good. A Boxing After Dinner showcase where he's the head name. I think
after dark, not after dinner.
Is that what I said? Yeah, go figure. It shows where my priorities are.
Yes.
This is a good chance for him to get a named showcase fight. I think in 1 or 2 more fights. I don't think he's going to get Kelly Pavlik next. I think he's a lot more likely to see Kelly Pavlik take on Andre Ward or something like that. It's a conversation for another day. But Rodriguez is there. Right,
and something interesting about Rodriguez, when Andre Ward was briefly stripped by the WBC, my automatic thoughts were that Chavez Jr. was not going to fight Martinez. He was going to move up and fight for the vacant WBC title against Edwin Rodriguez. I looked down the list. That's the name that made the most sense of a guy that was ranked in the top 5 at the time. I think if Chavez Jr. were to move up to super middleweight, he's probably going to think twice as to making Edwin Rodriguez his first opponent at 168. He looked really good in that fight.
Yeah.
Also looking really good was Vic Darchinyan.
Yeah.
They put in, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. Del Valle.
Yeah, go figure the white guy's pronouncing it the wrong way.
Del Valle, comes in undefeated and the prospect, and he's going to be showcased against, an aging champion, the grizzled veteran, who's on his way down, and Vic Darchinyan looked almost as good as ever.
Yeah, I mean, good. Hats off to him, and I guess every fighter has, that one last fight in him, and maybe this was Darchinyan's, but he looked sharp, surprisingly. I mean, it didn't seem like a fluke type of fight. I mean, it really came out. Now, what does that say about Del Valle? I mean, that's a different question, but Darchinyan, I think, has earned himself another title shot, at some point before his career is out, because this was a pretty significant victory against a prospect that he wasn't supposed to be.
And there's a lot of excitement now in boxing, David, because, we talked about Pacquiao and Marquez on last week's episode, and that's the big fight now that everybody's looking forward to. But from here to then, there's tons of fights for the boxing fan. It doesn't get any better than Mike Alvarado against Brandon Rios. That fight is a matchmaker's dream. It's a network's dream. It's a boxing fan's dream. You have 2 guys who just come forward, swing wildly. We saw Mike Alvarado against Brady Prescott in a heck of a fight on the undercard of Mayweather Cotto. Prescott dominating pretty much the entire fight, and Alvarado, he was consistent. He just kept coming forward, knocks him out in the last round, amazingly. And Brandon Rios, I mean, we don't need to go through his resume. He's an amazing fighter. He's going to be fighting at 140 finally. So it's a division that allows him to, not be, he's not going to be thinking that much about losing weight. How do you see that fight panning out? Because right now, I'm just thinking of the fight as this wild fight. I'm not thinking
Think
of
of
a
the
winner.
result. You know, it's interesting. You made the comment about Rios not having to worry about making weight. I would disagree, because in the fights where he wasn't making the lightweight limit, the guy was coming in at
Right.
137 and struggling to make 137. So this guy still has to watch his food and you know his regimen and everything. I don't think he's going to take Alvarado lightly. If anybody thought that you would,
not at all.
I mean, look at Brytis Prescott, because I thought Prescott fought a phenomenal fight against Alvarado, but the guy just would not go away. I've got to say that the advantage here is for Brandon Rios, because he's, go figure, I'm calling him a boxer compared to Alvarado, which is a real, probably insult to Alvarado more than it is a compliment to Rios. But these guys can bang point blank, and the fact of the matter is, neither of them has a chin that's ever significantly been dented, maybe at all. I think Rios is going to land more frequently than Alvarado, giving him the edge. But
Alvarado did get tagged by Brytis Prescott.
True, he did.
Who does hit hard.
Yeah, Prescott's no push. Ask Amir Khan how hard he hits, but
Right.
you know, because of the volume and punches, I've got to give the edge to Rios. But I mean,
I would agree with you.
this to me is, you know, a really exciting fight.
Yeah, and that fight's so exciting, you know. Right before we started the show, you know, I'm here talking to David, but we're going to talk about the Alvarado-Rios fight, ignoring the fact that Nishioka and Donaire are fighting in the main event. And that's a good fight. Nishioka finally coming, to be displayed here in the States against Nonito Donaire, who's one of the most popular fighters in all of boxing. What do you think of Donaire and Nishioka, and mentioning as well that one of the edges to get Brandon Rios is that Robert Garcia is in his corner, who also trains Nonito Donaire, one of the best trainers in boxing right now.
Hey,
he
made Marcos Maidana look like a boxer in his last fight.
Incredible, true but incredible. What do you think of Nishioka and Donaire?
I think Nishioka is maybe the toughest opponent that Donaire's had in quite a while. He's bigger, he's got the physical advantages, and he's one of those sound fighters. I mean, he's got a pretty solid game put together. With that said, Donaire is one of those few athletes who are truly gifted. But here's my issue with Donaire, and I still don't think it's going to come to bite him in the butt in this fight. But what bothers me, and Kevin Aioli updated the Yahoo Sports pound for pound rankings and said something that I took exception to, which was Nonito Donaire is a complete fighter. I think that Nonito Donaire has the capability of being a complete fighter, but he has so many mental lapses throughout his fights because he gets complacent, he gets agitated, he gets excited, and he starts becoming a showman. In fights against guys like Wilfredo Vasquez and stuff like that,
that's a fight that I was
he gets
thinking,
careless and he gets
about.
tagged. And I remember us having this conversation that if Wilfredo Vasquez had been a different kind of a puncher, this could have been a very different type of fight for Donaire.
And I think going into that fight, Vasquez was coming off a loss against Jorge Arce. First loss of his career is not that his confidence was shot, but it does something to a young fighter. That first loss, especially against a veteran, and a guy like Wilfredo Vasquez Jr., who had no amateur experience whatsoever, comes off this first loss, fights Donaire and holds his own, and at times he was doing marvelously, except he wasn't hitting as hard,
and he wasn't throwing,
or maybe he just wasn't throwing. He wasn't, I guess, as confident in his own fight,
right,
to do any damage against Donaire. And I'd be interested in seeing a rematch, to be honest, But Donaire and Nishioka, it's a good fight. It's another one that's a toss-up. I mean, it's an overall good night for boxing.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, again, you've got to give the edge to Donaire, in this situation because he's gifted in a way that Nishioka is just not. But I mean, maybe this is what it's going to take for Donaire to finally show that he is elite. I mean, he has the skill set. Like I've continued beating this dead horse with it. But he just doesn't put it together. There are mental lapses in Donaire, and maybe he needs a challenge like this in order to show what he's truly made of.
Right, and let's see if he could become that great fighter that everybody expects him to be. And probably in all this excitement with all these fights, probably the biggest disappointment to me this week and in the last few days was that Orlando Salido got injured.
Yeah.
So he's out of the fight with Mikey Garcia. That was a fight I was really looking forward to. But Erislan Di Laura is still going to fight Vanes Martirosyan.
Yeah, I hope he beats both of his eyebrows off, or whatever's left of him. I know we're not supposed to be biased out here, but I'm just not a fan of Vanes Martirosyan.
I mean, these are two guys, and
yeah, they are two guys.
The two guys that have gone, on Twitter and have called out Canelo, and they call out everybody.
Yeah, sure.
On Twitter,
hoping somebody will say yes.
I was hoping this fight was made because March Erosion just thought he could, sidestep a good fight for once and fight Canelo Alvarez for the title. It's like, buddy, you got to fight somebody good once.
Exactly.
Not everybody's Canelo Alvarez that can breeze through shitty fighters and become a world champion.
Right.
But March Erosion and Lara is a good fight. I expect Lara to win that fight.
I do too. I mean, March Erosion, who's his toughest opponent? Joe Green? I mean, outside of that, when he fought Green on the undercard of Cotto Foreman, I don't see anything on his resume that really impresses me.
He does bring a lot of fans, so
he does. Oddly
I'd
enough,
be interested to.
He's Armenian. Maybe he'll bring the Kardashian sisters.
The
with him.
Kardashians will be there. Also, this week they announced Abner Maris against Anselmo Moreno. That's a great fight.
Hell yeah. I can't wait for that fight. I hope it's an HBO fight.
And it's going to be at the Staples Center.
Yeah, I mean, good for them. I mean, that's, to me, is one of the fights that just has to be made, and that's an exciting fight.
Moreno's an awkward fighter.
Yeah.
But he's exciting to watch. He's fun to watch.
And so is Mars.
And
Mars is never in a
as
boring
well,
fight.
except when he fights Ekbeko and nails him in the nuts. But
right. To no fault of his
we'll
own, I
have
guess.
Alan Hopper again to talk about the fight.
Yeah.
And on that same card, Alfredo Angulo's back.
Yep.
This is a guy who lost one of the toughest fights. He had James Kirkland knocked out, loses the fight by knockout, then gets thrown in jail for immigration issues, and now he's back. Do you expect him to mount any type of second career if that's a proper statement?
He, to me, is the Marcos Maidana of the junior middleweights. I mean, he's always going to be in exciting fights. He needs to be matched carefully because he will be outclassed by the elite of the division. But as long as he's in that division, he can be a part of a lot of exciting fights. And his power is a difference maker. I mean, James Kirkland saw that, and for all intents and purposes, he could have lost that fight. You put him in there with a guy like Canelo, I think Canelo would outclass him. But he's got the kind of power that changes things.
That's a fight that I'm interested in seeing, actually.
But his power is unique.
If Angulo comes out and beats Raul Cáceres, who's the guy he's going to fight, no relation to Daniel Placeres. Cáceres and Placeres, two different names anyway. If he beats him, which I think he will, Cáceres is a bit of a limited fighter. He stands in front of his opponent, not much movement. Perfect for Angulo. I'd be interested in seeing a fight between Angulo and Canelo. Canelo's been known to pick his opponents, and that's no mystery. He probably has one more fight before a big fight, possibly on Cinco de Mayo. Why not Angulo? I mean, it'll be two Mexicans. It could potentially be a great fight, and I don't know if Canelo hits as hard as James Kirkland does. So it may be a fight that may go into the later rounds, maybe even a decision. It's
a makeable fight, especially if Miguel Cotto, for whatever reason, isn't able to come to terms with Canelo,
or loses to Austin Trout,
which is a
real
possibility as well. I think it's a very makeable fight. Both Golden Boy fighters. As an aside, Gabriel Montoya has done some pretty extensive interviews with Angulo post prison. And really is taking a look into the side of the fight that a lot of people don't see. We'll post some links on our Facebook and Twitter account throughout the week, but you'll definitely want to read those. But I think it's just good for boxing if Angulo's back in the ring, and I'm excited to see him.
And one last thing, Tim Bradley may be fighting here in Miami at Marlins ballpark or stadium or whatever it's called.
Yep.
That whole thing that I'm paying for and David's paying for and Alex is paying for.
Dollars.
His opponent yet to be named. Could be Andre Berto. Could be
Ruslan Provodnikov.
There you go. I wanted you to pronounce it.
Moving up from 140.
Who would you like to see Tim Bradley fight?
I think Andre Berto absolutely would be the much more exciting
And it makes sense
fight.
here in Miami.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Andre Berto has a lot of roots in South Florida. Bradley, coming over from the West Coast. I mean, Berto was a 147-pound challenger. I think that would be a real stiff challenge. Berto and Bradley fought a couple of times in the amateurs. Berto and Bradley fought a couple of times in the amateurs. It'd be interesting to see what happens at the professional level. Berto remains a big puncher. Bradley's not, but he's the superior technician. I think it's stylistically a really interesting fight.
Yeah, it's a fun fight, especially here in Miami. And they could get some Cubans on the undercard, maybe a couple more Haitians. Nicaraguans draw big in Miami.
They sure
I expect it to be a fun card, and hopefully, we'll both be there.
Maybe we'll get Mayorga down there too, since the Nicaraguans are so well loved.
Put Mayorga.
And there's a Nicaraguan restaurant a few blocks away from the stadium too.
One Nicaraguan restaurant. It's like,
there's like
200
fritangas.
But anyway, that's it for speaking of fritangas and food. We're gonna get ready to eat because we're starving.
We'll show you the food in just a second.
Go to our website, go to our Facebook page, and click through all our links.
Yep. And we're confident
we have fun episodes.
Oh yeah, we should have some good interviews for you next week too. So stay tuned. Boxing During Dinner. We'll see you next week.